Previously on the Skip and Josh Sports Show.
He's certainly like public enemy number one, for a lot of opposition teams. Like he's just a jerk, right? Like
He's a bleep disturber.
he is. And I mean,
Am I allowed to say that on the air?
well, I mean, you can say whatever you want. It's our show.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is on now.
Skippy,
Hey, what's up?
how are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
Good morning to you as well. This week was probably, since we've started recording, this week was the least eventful week I can recall.
The least eventful week in sports?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had a game 7.
We had a game 7, but I mean, there wasn't a lot of quantity in terms of different things that
Yeah.
happened.
I agree. I mean, we just talked off the air, and like I've kind of just been following baseball in the periphery because of the NBA and the NHL playoffs going on. So that's like in the back of my mind. And then, I mean, the NBA playoffs has been super boring. There's nothing to watch. And,
Right.
we had you're right. There was one night this week where there was nothing,
Yes.
right?
And I
There was
gonna
no
mention
hockey.
that.
There was no basketball.
It was the first time, I think, in over a month and a half
Yeah.
that there was no hockey or baseball, at least one of the two.
Right.
And that's what's really cool about the playoffs, obviously, because every night there's going to be something important to watch on television,
Right. I know.
sports-wise.
In my house, my wife was shocked. She's like, there's no game on tonight?
Exactly. And so now, I mean, I wasn't going to mention this till later on the show, but since you brought it up, I'm sure you've seen the schedule for the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Final.
Yes, I have.
And by the way, NBA Finals has an S at the end, and Stanley Cup Final does not have an S at the end. And make sure you get it right, because someone will get pissed at you if you don't.
Okay, so NBA, it's the NBA Finals with an S.
Correct.
And it's the Stanley Cup Final.
Without an S.
Right. Got it.
So the schedule for both came out.
We don't want the
And-
grammar police after us.
No, we don't.
No.
And
Well, as you said, as we talked about last week, the NBA Finals is starting on June 1st because that's what they decided a while ago.
it's like eons from now.
Yeah. And the NHL, who doesn't often they make a lot of weird decisions, they're starting on Monday, right?
But it's not so there's two things that bug me, and this is not what bugs me, and I know I'm not even asking the question because I know everything is dictated by television. I get it.
Yeah.
But I do have to mention two things. First of all, as long as I've been alive, weekends have been synonymous with sports.
Yes.
And so now you have this weekend right now, which by the way is a long weekend in the United States.
And there's nothing.
And there's absolutely nothing other than baseball.
Right.
I mean, there's the Indy 500, but we don't care. But it's just so weird to me that you've got the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs, and you have this entire weekend, and there's not one game for either of them. It just doesn't make any sense.
You're absolutely right. It's kind of strange, right? I mean,
I mean, I get it. The television wants it in prime time and whatever, but
no,
anyhow,
I mean, it doesn't make sense for the look, the NBA Finals. I mean, okay, this has been a terrible playoff in the NBA. It's been incredibly boring. Everything went like as one of our
As
favorite.
scripted.
It's chalk, right?
Yeah.
Everything went according to what was on the board. All the top seeds advanced. There was pretty much no upsets. The only drama was a little bit of the Wizards and the Celtics. They gave us a decent series. But other than that, I mean, it's been, blowouts and easy series wins, and basically coming to the conclusion that everybody knew already since the start of the year, Cavs Warriors. It's like everyone knew from day one of preseason it was going to be Cavs Warriors, and that's what we've got. So that's great because everyone's anticipating it, but I mean, I don't think the NBA is going to lose momentum by starting the playoffs on June 1st because there's no momentum anyways. The playoffs haven't given any momentum.
The other thing about it, never mind that they're only starting like in a week or whatever, 10 days from now.
Yeah.
If you look at the schedule for each of them,
Yeah.
there are a lot of days between games where they have 2 days between games instead of just one in
Yeah.
both hockey and in basketball.
Yeah.
And so I don't quite understand what the deal is with
Well,
that.
the NBA has been doing that throughout where they give an extra day rest when they travel when they change. So the first 2 games are in Golden State, and then there's that extra day off when they go to Cleveland. I don't know why they do it. That's just what they do. It's probably, to say they care about player safety and player fatigue is nonsense because they don't. But that's the way it's been. But I find the series loses a little bit of momentum. We always said we like the NHL playoffs the best because it's like when the games are, right?
Right, but the NHL is doing the same thing as the NBA now. On the days that there's travel days, they're also taking 2 days off between games.
I don't know if they're trying to schedule their stuff on different nights in the NBA, or they just it's a TV thing. But whatever.
It's just weird. And then
I'm just
like
happy
I said,
there's no day games.
the
I mean, that's a start, right? We should get excited about little things. There's no day games in the NHL
I don't mind
playoffs.
day games on a Sunday or a Saturday, but yes, I get what you're saying. I mean,
Right.
for basketball,
Yeah.
day games for basketball. I mean, they play on Sunday afternoons all the time.
Yeah. But I think that's changed, right? Back in the day when we were younger, day games were more prominent. You used to see not in hockey, but you used to see day games in the other sports. And the NFL is kind of paved the way, not the NFL, it's TV ratings. They realized, hey, we put a show in prime time, it's going to get more eyeballs, right? So that's what they try to do. That's why there's Thursday night football. That's why there's Monday night football. That's why there's Sunday night football. So, the other sports don't want to. There's an advantage for not. There's an advantage for not putting games during the day. But like Pittsburgh, Nashville. I don't know what kind of ratings they're going to get. I'm sure the NHL's thrilled that Ottawa's not in. I don't. That affects their ratings a lot.
Oh yeah, if it was Ottawa, Nashville, it'd be brutal.
Yeah.
It'd be good in Canada maybe, but brutal out in the States.
Yeah, well, because you're the one that told me, right? The Canadians' ratings, they don't count the Canadian ratings, right?
Not in the States.
So
no.
when you watch on CBC or Sportsnet, they don't. Doesn't register for them.
Right, and even if you watch on NBC here, I don't know if it registers.
Probably not, because it's we're gonna get Canadian commercials, I'm sure.
Oh no, on NBC you won't.
No, you won't, because it's a different broadcast.
But
right?
I don't know if they're able to measure that.
I don't know.
So in any case, it's just the good thing about this time of year, as you said, every night there's always something going on, except there was one night this week where there wasn't. But now we're going to have sometimes 2 days off or whatever, at least in the finals. I get it. You can't have a game every day because teams need a day off and whatever. Right. But the good thing was you'd have hockey on the even numbered days, and you'd have basketball on the odd number days. So you'd have something for 2 full weeks if they both went 7 games.
Right.
We're not going to have that situation this year because there's going to be days where there's going to be nothing.
So, we talked about the schedule, but are you looking forward to the finals of both sports?
So I'll actually watch a bit of the NBA finals, sorry, with an S.
Finals.
I'll actually watch a bit of them because it's the 2 teams that are in there, and they faced each other. It's the 3rd time in a row. And so there's actually some kind of excitement around it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Celtics Lakers. The same teams in the finals. So.
Yes, I wasn't really paying attention to basketball back then, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll actually watch a bit of basketball, and I've been listening to some experts on the radio and on television give their weigh in on who they think is going to win. If I had to pick a winner, I'm going to say Golden State, only because look, they had the best team in the league and they added Kevin Durant.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they had the best record in the league once again this season. And Cleveland had a very ordinary regular season by their standards.
They did.
They
didn't even have a great start to the playoffs. They kind of barely got past Indiana. They
did
won all the games, but the games were close, and
yeah. So what? Cleveland's lost 1 playoff game. Golden State's lost none.
Right.
And yeah, both teams are going to be very well rested, maybe even too rested.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pick Golden State to win the series, and don't ask me how many games because I have no idea.
I'm actually I told my son that I'm gonna cheer for Golden State, and he looks at me like I'm on Mars. He can't believe that I'm gonna cheer for Golden State. I'm like, I'm just not a big fan of LeBron.
Your son's probably too young to remember the decision.
Well, that he knows about it. He's not too young, but he looks at Golden State as the villains, Durant and like Curry's not also I don't know, somehow people just don't like him. They don't identify with him. I don't know why, but I don't know. I'm going to cheer for Golden State, but I don't know. If I had to make a prediction, I'd predict Golden State, but I'm not going to be surprised if Cleveland wins because LeBron James is that good.
Yeah, and that's all it comes down to. He decided last year he was going to take matters into his own hands, and he willed them back to victory, 3 straight wins the last 3 games.
Yeah.
Does he have that in him again?
I don't know.
It's not easy to do it the second time because the first time you have all this emotion inside of you, like, determined to win the game at all costs.
Yeah.
But now that you've done it once, it's like, okay, I've done it once.
Yeah, but remember the difference between this year and last year in terms of why I would pick Golden State is, number one, they didn't have Durant, so that's huge, right?
Right.
I mean, Durant is the okay. So now we're gonna get into like some X's and O's.
Right.
Often we just talk about how we feel, but like if you want to break down like the X's and O's of Cleveland versus Golden State. They didn't have Durant. So last year, Golden State was pretty much strictly a perimeter shooting team. They shoot threes and threes and threes. They run a lot of screens, and their guys get open. Curry doesn't need a screen. He just does a step back, and he shoots from wherever he wants. Klay Thompson, they run a lot of plays for him off screens where he runs off the screen and shoots, catch and shoot. And they don't have much of a post game. They never really go inside, and it's all an offense predicated, on ball movement. But what they lacked when they really, really needed it is a guy that could just get the ball. You know how the NBA is, right? Get the ball, ISO, everybody clears out, and he takes his guy one-on-one. And that's what Durant can do that Golden State didn't have last year. And the other thing why Golden State, you said, and not wrong, that LeBron took over. But don't forget, Draymond Green got suspended last year for a game in the finals.
Right.
And that was the turning point. Right?
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't get suspended last year, Golden State probably wins the series.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, Golden State has everything, all the pressure on them because they went out, they got Durant, they told the whole NBA world, they put a huge target on themselves, right? They
should win.
They should win. So if they don't win the championship, which is a tall order, right?
Then it's a bad season.
Then it's a bad season, right?
Disappointing season for them.
Yeah. How do you like all this talk of this week? I don't want to get into the debate. I just wanted to have your opinion. All the talk this week on other media about like LeBron vis-a-vis Michael Jordan. Like all of a sudden people think LeBron is the greatest player ever. And whereas the conversation never really existed before, it was always like, oh, Michael Jordan's the best.
Right. Well, it's, as I was mentioning to you, a lot of people measure this based on championships.
Yeah.
And Jordan obviously has more, and I don't know if LeBron will ever catch him, to be honest. The other thing, though, I think the reason people are saying LeBron is the best is because he's gotten to the finals. Is this the 7th consecutive year that he's gotten to the finals?
Yes. And think about it. Do you think like
I don't know if Jordan even did that. Did Jordan even do that?
Well, Jordan won 6 in 8 years.
But he didn't do it 7. He didn't go to the finals.
No, and the 2 that he didn't win is because he retired.
Right,
and
right.
For those of you, I'm holding up the air quotes, retired.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, I guess he probably would have went to 8 in a row and maybe even won 8 in a row, which would be ridiculous, right? To think about. We don't know. We can only, dream it up. But no, he didn't go to that many finals in a row. I think the record is like for final appearances is Bill Russell, and it's some kind of obscene number. Like 16 out of 18 or something.
But there probably weren't
no, the league is different
teams
then.
In the league back
No,
then.
And there was no big men. It was him and Wilt, so it wasn't the same. Yeah, and there wasn't this many teams. So, yeah, I mean, and LeBron's not going anywhere. Don't you think he's like getting better? Like
LeBron?
He seems to be getting better, if you ask me.
Yeah, but he's how old is he now? He's not exactly young anymore.
30 or 32? Something like this.
Yeah,
he's been in the league forever because he started right out of high school, right?
Right. So he's got a lot of mileage on his
He does, but he seems as good as ever. So like it's not unreasonable to say that he's going to make it to the finals 10 years in a row.
Look, I mean, in any conversation you have about the best NBA player of all time, obviously LeBron's in that conversation.
Yeah.
He's at worst is in the top 3.
But all the LeBron haters that were like, oh no, he's not even in the top 3. He's not number 1. He's not even in the top 5. Like last year, you heard people saying this, but now it's like I don't think you can argue that anymore. He's 1 or 2, and that's in my mind. You can have it. You can make your choice, right? But I don't know why it's such a big deal. This is what I wanted to get at when I asked you what you thought about this conversation, because when it comes to like other sports, we don't often have this conversation. Like, oh, who's the greatest player? Who's the best player in MLB? I mean, if I asked you who's the best player in MLB history, you could probably give 10 answers. They would all be right. Because there's so many different positions. Same thing in football. Football, it always comes down to the quarterback.
It's impossible.
It's possible, but I mean, there's also so many different positions that it's hard to compare. Is it Joe Montana? Is it Tom Brady? Is it Jerry Rice? Is it Walter Payton?
But also in football, it seems like every year there's a different guy who's like the best player in the league.
Yeah.
There's no like, Gretzky won MVP. Was it 5 years in a row or something?
More. Yeah, but like I know because the lifespan,
the
lifespan of an NFL athlete is shorter, right? The career. So yeah, but it seems like in NBA, it's like one guy is so important. So I guess it's kind of easier to say who's the greatest ever.
Because there are less guys on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, one guy affects the game.
Teams are smaller, so each person is more important.
Yeah, well, one guy affects the game so much, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I'll say about Jordan, I mean, yes, he's the greatest player of all time. I'm not going to argue that, whatever. But he's one of the only guys who, when he played, like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird played at the same time.
Yeah.
And LeBron has Steph Curry, and he had Kobe Bryant at the same time, whatever. Yeah. But Michael Jordan, there was really no other, like, who was his
Bird and
nemesis?
Magic were on the way out. His nemesis, what I know, it's sad to say, right? Because I'm going to tell you like some names of who his nemesis was. It was like Charles Barkley or maybe Shaq, but those are like, Shaq kind of came in a little bit after. Like they beat Shaq in the playoffs when Shaq was on Orlando, but that was the young Shaq, right?
Yeah. So I mean, he really didn't have, like, Jordan had no one.
No, well, that's why those 2 years where he retired, Houston won the championship both years, and that was Hakeem Olajuwon. So he was the best player in the league for 2 years. But I mean, I don't think you can. Hakeem is great, but I don't think Jordan considers him his foe. The closest we've seen is Charles Barkley, because there's that year, I think it's 95. I get the years mixed up, where they Chicago beat the Phoenix Suns in the finals, and it was 6 games, and Barkley was out of his mind. Barkley was as close to Jordan at that time as it could have come. He was incredibly dominant. And that's the one team, that the 95 Suns, that a lot of people don't talk about. They were really a great team that didn't really, get a lot of attention because, they lost to the Bulls and then they never made it back.
Hi there, Skip and Josh will be right back. To get in touch with them, you can send them an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. You can follow them on Twitter @skipandjosh, and you can visit their website at www.skipandjosh.com. And now, back to the show.
Wow, I can't believe we talked so much about basketball.
I know, crazy.
Crazy. So let's turn to like our main sport here in Canada, which is hockey. Did you watch Game 7 of Ottawa-Pittsburgh?
I watched only the overtime because I was playing hockey, but I got to see.
Oh, it's perfect for you. You came home and the game was still on.
Yeah, I got to see the most important part of the game.
It's brilliant.
I felt so bad for Ottawa because
I didn't.
They really had no business being going as far as they did, to be honest.
I mean, Pittsburgh dominated the series for like maybe the last 15 periods.
Well, Ottawa won 3 of the games, first of all.
No, but I'm saying
and the game, and the last game that they lost in double overtime. So the series had to have been close.
You're 100% right. But when you look at it, Pittsburgh blew them out, right? In what was in Game 5?
Yeah, so that happens once every series.
Blew them out.
You can point to one game like that in every series where there's a blowout.
Game 6, Pittsburgh completely dominated the game. Should have blown them out again. Craig Anderson stood on his head, and Ottawa somehow squeaked it out, right?
Fair enough, but you run into a hot goalie. It's happened to everybody.
And then in Game 7, Pittsburgh picked up exactly where they left off. They completely dominated the game, and I was actually, if Pittsburgh would have lost in overtime, I was really going to feel bad for them, because the scoring chances the shots was like something like 45-25 in the game, something like this.
Yeah. And
the scoring chances was not even close. But when you get into overtime and double overtime, it's one shot, one deflection, one bounce, right?
And that's what it was.
And that's what it came down to. But I mean, clearly Pittsburgh, deserved to win Game 6, and they deserved to win Game 7. So I do feel like the better team won,
That could be. But the reason I feel bad for Ottawa is because I don't think they're that good a team, and I don't think they're going to be able to get back to this spot next year. Whereas Pittsburgh, I think, can get back to this spot next year. So this was like Ottawa's really only chance to get to the finals, and possibly win a cup, because also nothing against the Nashville Predators, but they are, I think, the 16th seed
They
in the
are.
entire of all the teams that made the
It's
playoffs.
a-
I think they're the 16th seed.
They are the 16th seed, but it's a bit unfair because they have a good team. I mean,
They do have a good team, but my point is this was going to be Ottawa's only chance because there's no way they're going to go on a run like this again next year. And even if they do, they're probably going to end up facing a better team in the finals.
yeah. And
So
just
that's why I felt bad for Ottawa.
just think about Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't know how they're doing it with their defense, like the defensemen that they've got playing. I mean, Mark Streit was in a game the other day, right?
Yeah, when did he become bad, by the way?
Well, he's old
Like he
already.
used to be so good, and
Yeah.
the first game he played this year, he actually had a good game.
Yeah, and you see who's playing big minutes? Ron Hainsey.
I know he was
I
on
mean,
the
it's-
Canadians 100 years ago.
It's like their defense is like string
it's-
and copper
duct tape.
wire, you know,
Yeah.
duct tape.
and they have I think like 3 forwards who played most of the regular season who are also out,
Yeah,
and of course Chris Letang, they're probably their best defenseman's out.
yeah.
So
It's-
I'm not sure how they're doing it.
It's great for them that they can go to 2 goalies.
Yeah, I mean, no other team can do that.
I mean, they're doing it because the top guys are great, right? Crosby is the most complete forward in the league. Like, that's not even close, I don't think. Like, in terms of everything he does on the ice, you know? And Malkin is a total beast.
Yeah.
Phil Kessel is their
playing
third
great.
best forward. He'd probably be the best forward on just about every team in the league, or, you know,
Yeah.
not 75% of teams in the league. He's the
25
best
of the
forward.
30
Yeah.
teams. Yeah.
And then,
And then they're getting production from this kid Jake Gensel, who no one heard of like 2 months ago.
Rust Gensel, well, Connor Sheary was there last year. You know, they have a bunch of guys that they just plug in. Look, Kunitz, he's always the forgotten man, right? So
He was good when he was on Anaheim.
he was good on Pittsburgh. Like, he's had a good career. I mean,
Yeah,
look, he's
yeah.
played with Crosby most of his
And
career,
didn't
so
he
that
make
helps.
Team Canada just because Crosby wanted to play with him? Is that
Yeah, yeah. Well, they wanted
Wasn't
to
that-
have like some chemistry, so they
Right,
they
right.
put him on
I
their
think-
line.
I think Crosby can play with pretty much anyone.
I think so too. But you heard this thing this week. I heard like it's like, oh, it's not always so easy to play with Crosby. You have to adapt to his style. I'm like, that's complete nonsense. Crosby's the best player in the league. He makes it easy for you to play with him, right? How is it hard to play with a guy who puts the puck on your stick when you're in the slot every time? You know.
Well, I mean, only if he's like a much faster skater than you and you can't keep up with him. But I mean,
guess,
if you're in the NHL, I think you're a decent skater.
yeah, it's not like they have Dave Andrechuk on his line who can't skate up and down. You know, they've got their whole team is speed. Every forward can skate on that team.
Yes.
So, I mean, Nashville is, I guess, not the favorite. Mostly because I think it would be closer in people's minds if Johansson was not injured. Because, I mean, obviously he's their top forward.
Right.
So,
And Fisher might come back.
I mean, Fisher helps, but I mean, Fisher is he's not a game breaker. He's a good two-way player, right?
Right. He's nothing special.
But I mean, sure, of course they'd like to have him. So they don't have much going on at center right now, Nashville, but they do have good, very, very strong defense, you know. So their top two pairs, you know, play, you know, 80% of the game, right? So you've got Subban on the ice half the game, and you've got, you know, Roman Josi and Ellis on half the game. You know, so it's tough to play against them just because of that, and they have a very good goalie, so they are tough to score on. I mean, I'm expecting a long series. What do you think?
I can break this down a little bit more than I can break down the NBA Finals.
More X's and O's. I love it.
Well, not so much X's and O's, but I'm going to go position by position, and I'll say which team gets the edge. In goaltending, I'm going to give Nashville the edge because Pekka Rinne is just insane.
But it's
He's also-
it's close though, right? I mean, it's
I don't think it's as close as everyone thinks. Pekka Rinne has a much better track record. He has a much better resume. I mean, no, he's never been to the Stanley Cup and he's never won the Stanley Cup.
yeah.
But Matt Murray and Fleury have had the benefit of playing on better teams.
Yeah, that's just true.
If you just look at the goalie himself and ignore the team that he's on and ignore his one-loss record, which I do in baseball all the time, by the
No,
way,
of course you take Pekka Rinne. Yeah.
I would take Pekka Rinne over either of the Pittsburgh goalies.
All
any
I'm
day.
saying is that I don't think the gap is huge. I think
Oh no,
Pittsburgh's
it's
there.
not. It's not huge. No,
Yeah.
it's not huge.
Yeah.
But Pekka Rinne has the edge. So Nashville has the edge in nets.
Yeah.
On defense, Nashville definitely has the edge.
Huge margin.
Because
Yeah, big.
Their fourth best defenseman, whoever you think it is,
Would be number 1 on Pittsburgh.
correct. So I'll give Nashville the edge there. But on offense, there's no question that Pittsburgh has the edge
Right.
because their fourth best forward would be on the top line on Nashville, let's just say.
Right. But then wouldn't you say that since you've given 2 out of the 3 positions to Nashville, do you think they're going to win the series?
This one, I'm not sure of. Like,
what about coaching?
Or
does it not matter?
Well, no, it matters. It matters. And interesting, Sullivan has won a Stanley Cup. Yeah. And I think Laviolette's also won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Carolina.
In fact, Laviolette's this is now the 3rd different team he's taken to the finals.
Right.
And not many coaches have done that, so he must be doing something right.
Right.
This one, if you're asking me for a prediction, I'm going to say it's going 7 games because I have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
And neither team would surprise me. The only thing that gives me pause, I guess, is that Nashville was really kind of ordinary in the regular season.
Yeah, well, the thing is, because this is what I was saying about Pekka Rinne. You know why they were ordinary in the regular season? Rinne is very inconsistent. So he's found his groove in the playoffs, which is great. That's why they're doing well. But he is a little bit inconsistent from game to game. So that's what worries me if I'm a Nashville fan.
I'm gonna go with Pittsburgh. If I was gonna go to Vegas and put money on it, I would put it on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I would too.
They just, they had the better regular season. They have more firepower. They've been there before.
Yeah.
And they have of all the players on both teams, they have the best player, Sidney Crosby.
And what do you think of so they came out with the Eastern Conference trophy?
Yeah.
And Crosby made a point of grabbing that trophy. And they actually took a picture, from what I heard on the broadcast, the picture that they took with Malkin and who's the other assistant? Kunitz?
I don't even know, but it was just the 3 of them. It wasn't the whole team.
It was just the 3 of them, but I think it's the exact same picture, and they're holding the trophy in the exact same position as they did last year.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I don't remember what they did last year, but I believe everything you're saying.
Yeah.
And the thing that I found the most interesting, is Crosby basically picked it up. They took the photo,
and then he took it to the bench.
He took it to the locker room, like you never saw him again.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was no the celebration was it just sort of ended.
Right. But I think in Nashville they didn't touch the trophy.
They didn't. Whatever. You know what? Touch it, don't touch it. I don't think that really matters.
Right.
I get why teams don't do it. It's all superstition, whatever. But
it's all superstition.
It was funny that Crosby basically just picked it up. He had a few words with his co-captains, and then went straight to the locker room. It was just weird.
It's great.
It was
super
funny.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think it's awesome, and it's amazing. Jacques Martin's an assistant on Pittsburgh.
I didn't even know that.
I keep seeing him behind the bench. I'm like, what the hell?
I completely forgot about that.
I guess, he's a hockey mind. Maybe he's not, his days of head coaching are finished, but certainly in terms of defensive hockey, he knows what he's doing.
At this day and age, teams have so many assistant coaches, it's impossible to keep track.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff gets broken down. Hockey is really
they're trying
the
to
coaching
like
is it's insane. Yeah.
You have your power play coach, you have your penalty killing coach, you
goalie
have your defenseman coach, goalie coach, whatever.
I guarantee you, if you ever meet Ken Dryden, not that I met him once. I mean, at an event, but I didn't ask him. But there was no goalie coaches back then.
I don't think there was. I think you're right.
The goalies used to go in the corner during practice. The trainer used to come out, or some guy used to come out and take a bunch of shots at him, and that was your goalie coach.
Yeah.
It's almost like when my son played hockey, I used to feel bad for the goalies, right? Because we'd have practice. The kids would have practice, and they get there. I mean, when they're little, it's even worse. The practices are early, but the kids come out to practice, and a lot of kids couldn't care less about practice, but they come out there, and the coach has all these. If your coach is really prepared, which we've had over the years, some good coaches. They have the drills planned. They have a practice plan, right? So first we're going to do this. Then we're going to do this. Then we're going to do this, and they have all the drills all planned out. But the goalie is basically just in nets during the drills. There's no one coaching the goalie. The goalie's just there,
And half the time he's standing around doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's standing around taking shots, But I mean, is that helping him get better? No. So it's pretty amusing. But now the goalie coach probably has an assistant goalie coach. Who knows?
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is back.
So there's something that I wanted to talk to you about hockey.
Because there's two other things I want to talk about hockey before we switch to a different sport. But you go first.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this last week and I forgot, and I want to talk about the week before and I forgot, and then this morning I was like, I really got to talk to Josh about that thing, and I almost couldn't remember what it was. I'm like, what was it? What was the thing I wanted to talk about? Oh my God. Now I remember. So you remember when we did our NHL playoff preview? Or maybe it was the week after.
I actually don't. I don't remember, to be
No,
honest.
it was.
It seems like such
a
long time
so
ago.
long ago. But it was when the playoffs first started. We talked about how there was all these Canadian teams,
Yeah.
and there was how many Canadian teams were in the playoffs? Five, right? So there was 5. Sportsnet had 5 separate broadcast crews,
Yes.
and we gave our predictions about who would advance, so to speak, in terms of the broadcast crews as the playoffs unfolded. And I mean, obviously, it's a no-brainer to know that Houston and Simpson were the number 1 team. They're going to go and they're going to do the finals, guaranteed,
Correct.
right? But I didn't really have an opinion as to like who was going to be the number 2 crew. I really thought it was when you pressed me, I said it was going to be Bob Cole, because I thought, Bob Cole has the prestige about, advancing. And you said you thought it was going to be Paul Romanek and Gary Galley.
No, I thought it was going to be Dave Randorf.
Dave Randorf, right?
Yes.
So we were both wrong.
We were both wrong.
Paul Romanek and Gary Galley were doing the Nashville Anaheim series.
And I was stunned.
It's like when higher ups at Sportsnet are like, let's really get the best guy to do look, Paul Romanek does a fine job. I think he did a fine job.
He gets a little bit too excited sometimes when you don't need to get excited.
If you're picking between Randorf and Romanek, and maybe Bob Cole didn't want to do it, I don't know. Like, it's fine. But Gary Galley, I mean, there's these official evaluations. We have it at our company where you have to evaluate your employees. You got to talk to them. You got to fill out all these forms and stuff. It's really long and complicated.
Yeah.
So they get in Gary Galley in the room. They're like, your performance, you only know about the Ottawa Senators. You have nothing to add to the broadcast. Bam, let's put you in the semifinals.
Exactly.
I was like, what are they thinking?
No rhyme or reason.
I guess they thought he's better than the other junk they had, right?
So the other thing about Gary Galley, I don't know if you watch the games at the beginning of the game and sometimes in the middle of the game, they go through his little checklist that he has, right? He's got like,
he has his points, his key points, right?
Well, he has 7 or 8 different aspects of the game, and he gives a check mark to which team
is going to win that. Yeah.
Is doing it better or is going to do it better.
Right.
Which would be fine, except that for some of the categories, he's given both teams the check mark. So I don't get that. Like, how do both teams get a check mark? It doesn't make any sense.
This is Gary Galley logic.
You pick one or the other. You can't push.
Yeah, you can't push, right? Yeah, I don't know.
So anyway, that's what I didn't understand about him. But it's only the Gary Galley games that they do that.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's going to be Houston and Simpson, which is fine. I'm not a big fan.
If it's not, I'll be stunned.
No, I mean it's going to be. But I mean,
I'm gonna watch Mike Emmerich on NBC.
I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'll
watch the intermission on CBC because I like the intermissions on CBC.
Jim Houston does a great job. I think he's fabulous. Craig Simpson, not a huge fan. And look, I'm not going to get into the panel. You know how I feel about some of those guys on the panel.
So I want to stay with hockey, but completely have nothing to do with the playoffs.
Oh, okay.
So the Canadians, as you know, made a bunch of acquisitions on trade deadline day. We went over them on our special show.
Mm-hmm.
One of their amazing acquisitions that they made on trade deadline day is now retired from hockey and is a coach.
Who's this?
Steve Ott is an assistant coach for the St. Louis Blues.
Okay, but I mean...
So what an excellent acquisition that is. The guy they acquired is no longer playing in the league.
Well, I'll bet. I mean, when you acquire guys on trade deadline day, when you're usually acquiring expiring contracts and you kind of know, like, you're getting him for a playoff run and that's it. So I
wasn't expecting him to be on the team next season, but I was expecting him to actually play in the league next season on a different team. But if he thinks he's not good enough to play on a team anymore, what does that say?
He thinks he's not good enough to play on a team anymore, and the Habs are giving him a regular shift.
Right. Yeah. That's my point.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, good luck to Steve Ott. Or what's the other thing you want to talk about?
It's a very small thing.
Good.
The NHL is changing uniform providers. It's going to be Adidas now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about this.
Adidas is taking over.
Adidas is taking over doing the NHL uniforms.
They're really catching up to Nike in like shoe sales. They're marketing like crazy.
Well, because of this, there are 12 teams in the NHL next year that are changing their uniforms.
Oh, because they're having a new provider.
Right.
Okay.
And I mean, when I say changing them, They might be removing a little stripe here or adding a little
yeah.
stripe there or whatever. It's not going to be a major change.
When you
But the reason they're doing it is because they want to sell more jerseys, so they have to change it slightly. So the diehard fans will say, "Oh, I have to get the new jersey."
Oh yeah, I got the 2017 alternate home B.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about money, as
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, look, whatever. Adidas, they're a fine company. Nothing bad to say about them.
Check out the Skip and Josh Sports Show on Twitter. You know that little app with the little blue Tweety bird? Yeah, you can follow them there at Skip and Josh.
We need to talk about baseball because it's baseball season, and soon all we're going to have to talk about is baseball.
Go for it.
Soon on our show, when hockey's over and basketball's over and football hasn't started, you and I are going to be breaking down like the third inning of the Seattle Mariners Minnesota Twins game.
Yeah, it's so true. I think maybe during the summer we're gonna have to like find some other topics. Like maybe this is when we'll get into like TV movies and all that music and that.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Because
that's a good idea.
because if it's just baseball, like we're gonna bore ourselves.
TV movies. This is completely off topic. There was a made-for-TV movie on this week, a remake of Dirty Dancing. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't watch
There was
it.
so much promotion for it on ABC. I don't know why they were hyping it up so much.
Apparently, it was the biggest piece of trash they put out there.
I watched a bit of it, and it was like the original one's a good movie. This one was awful.
No. I mean, I didn't have any intention of watching it.
In any case, what I wanted to talk about baseball, specifically the Jays. So all of a sudden, it was not that long ago. It was doom and gloom for the Jays.
Yeah.
On the last day in April, they were 8-17 with a .320 winning percentage. I believe they had not the worst record in the majors, but pretty close to the worst record in the majors.
Yeah.
Plus, they had all these injuries with Josh Donaldson and Troy Tulowitzki, and 3/5 of their starting rotation. So people were talking about having a fire sale.
You were
trading everybody. Yeah, well, I mean, I was just telling you what they were saying on the on the local sports talk radio shows here in town. So now, yesterday, both Donaldson and Tulowitzki came back into the lineup, and their pitching rotation is starting to come back into form. And the guys, by the way, who had to fill in for all these injuries have done a decent job considering they're not everyday players.
Your boy Joe Biagini.
He's been good. He's had one bad start, but other than that, he's been great. So now the Jays are only 4 games under 500. They're still in last in the AL East, and I mean the Yankees have had a sick 2 months.
At least they closed the gap. I mean,
but they're only 6.5 games out. They've got a few of their injured guys back, and so all of a sudden there's hope and optimism in the city of Toronto for their baseball team.
Wow, everyone's back on the bandwagon.
I guess I'm going to the game on Monday. It'll be my first baseball game of the season.
Against who?
I think they're playing the Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, good. Those should be more wins. The Reds are brutal.
Now, interestingly enough, so Donaldson and Tulowitzki were both back in the lineup last night. Neither of them are playing today.
Oh, they're like bringing them along slowly.
Which I never understood because it's
either
baseball.
you can play or you can't play.
Yeah. It's like, why do they need a day off? And I get it. It's a day game after a night game, but still, it's baseball.
That's
How
just
difficult
nonsense.
is it?
That's like the manager saying, "Oh, we have a day game after a night game. Better rest them." But like, come on,
It's baseball.
I guess you look at it as a marathon. You'd rather sit them out one game if it's going to prevent them from getting injured again long term.
Of course, but you know as well as I do that most of the time you're just standing around doing nothing.
Yeah, 100%.
Even in professional baseball.
Yeah.
So whatever.
You get up 4 times and maybe a couple of grounders get hit to you.
Or a couple fly balls if you're an outfielder.
Right. So how do you feel about Jose Bautista playing third base the other night?
He's done it. I think he did it twice this week.
Yeah.
And he played well. I was surprised. I know he used to play third base a decade ago.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that he, still feels the position pretty well.
I mean, I think it was a good move for them. They're desperate. They got to, do something. Although, I mean, look.
I don't know that it helps them anyway, because then who plays right field?
Yeah, but I guess, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe when you're playing in a National League park and you can't use the DH, fine, whatever. But other than that, it doesn't really help them.
I mean, look, I'm glad the Jays have, they've won 4 in a row now, and they've crawled back into like respectability. They still have a long way to go. I mean, they're still in last, right?
Yeah, they're still in last in the AL East, but
Yeah.
it's a long season.
Yeah.
And I think the year that they made the playoffs, the year that they made those trades where they got David Price,
They
at the trade
were
deadline-
under 500 at the All-Star break, or just a few games under 500.
Yeah, they had a very similar record.
Yeah, they were
they do-
just
as they do
hovering,
now.
They were just hovering, and then they started getting really hot, and then they made all those moves, and they finished on fire. So, look, Donaldson is huge. He's their best player. So,
Yeah,
You
if
know.
he can be like the MVP caliber Donaldson,
Yeah.
then this team can do some
no,
damage.
look, you take Bryce Harper away from Washington, they're not the same team. You take Bryant away from out of Chicago, they're not the same team. Like
Right.
that's you take Mike Trout off of the Angels, they're like a minor league team. So.
And the Yankees, as we said, they're playing 600 baseball, which is insane.
Yeah.
Who knows if they're going to keep it up? A lot can happen between now and September.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's huge. Baseball's is a marathon. It takes
mean,
forever.
The problem with the AL East is there's also Boston and Baltimore.
Yeah, but I
So-
don't know. Like Baltimore, Baltimore is good. They're not great. They're good. Boston is good, and the Yankees are great, but with a question mark.
If Toronto was in the NL East,
Mm-hmm.
they'd be in second place.
Yeah, they'd be in second place, but they'd still be like more games behind.
Right, but I mean they'd have a better shot at the wild card, let's say.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, whatever. If I had wheels, I'd be a bicycle. So who cares?
yeah,
They're
well,
not in the NL East. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
there's some divisions that are weaker than others. That's all.
Yeah. And you know what? For years, the Jays had it tough in the AL East, right? So things have kind of settled down where you don't have the Yankees and the Red Sox like in like a nuclear war, like try for supremacy of the division. But things at least have like evened out a little bit, So, all right. Well, have a great weekend.
Okay, you too.
And we'll
enjoy
chat,
enjoy the Indy 500.
Yeah.
We haven't talked at all about any of the Triple Crown horse races on this show.
I don't. Well, do you? Oh, I mean, we're going overtime here, but I want to tell you that I do watch the Kentucky Derby every year.
You do?
Every year.
Why?
I love it.
Really?
The pageantry. It sounds silly, but it's just like something that started many, many years ago, and I try to watch it every single year. So this year it was on.
I've known you for 20 years. I had no idea.
It was
about
on.
this.
I watched 2 hours of the pre-show. It was just on. I'm lying in front of the TV.
The whole thing is a pre-show. The race is 2 minutes.
It's the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. That's why I watch
The
it.
show is 4 hours, but the race is 2 minutes. So there's like 3 hours and 58 minutes of pre-show.
I watched 2 hours of the pre-show, and then right before the race came on, I had to go out to drive someone somewhere, and so I recorded the race and rushed back home.
You
and
missed
watched
the
it.
race.
No, I
You missed
watched
the
it.
best
I mean,
part.
it's not something that you can like get spoiled. Like I watched it on tape delay by 5 minutes, which is so weird.
I'm stunned about all what I'm hearing right now.
I love the announcers. I love when they are like how they announce the race, how they call those 2 minutes. I think it's fascinating how the play-by-play of the race for those 2 minutes. So I find it amazing.
And down the stretch they come in the Kentucky Derby.
I'm not sure who I'm even talking to.
But like the Preakness and the Belmont, I won't watch those.
It's the same thing.
I don't know anything about horse racing. I have no money on it. I don't know any of the horses. I didn't know any of the horses until I started watching the 2 hour pre-show, and I watched the race, and that's it.
Okay, well, enjoy. I hope you did enjoy it.
It was okay. I was a little bit disappointed with the play-by-play guy this year, so we'll see next year.
Okay.
All right. Great talking to you. And
Great talking to you,
we'll chat
too.
again next time.
Yes.
Okay.
The Skip and Josh Sports Show is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.